So, a very good morning to all. Uh, Today, we'll start session 3. Topic is databases and introduction to MongoDB. The speaker is Mr. Sudeep Bhattacharya, Associate Professor, BIT Durg. We are very fortunate, sir, for having you with us. Sudeep sir
Good
has a
morning.
vast experience in document databases. So hopefully all the participants will gain a lot of knowledge from here, theoretical as well as practical. Thank you, sir. Please uh, carry on with the session, sir.
Thank you, sir. So, good morning, all of you.
Very good morning, sir.
I'm sharing my screen, but before that, can I just know how many of you were actually able to install MongoDB? We shared the links of Windows and Ubuntu installation of MongoDB last night. So, do you have MongoDB installed on your machines?
Yes, sir. Already installed.
Okay, if you have the installation of MongoDB, then it's well and fine because the second session for today will be taken by Mr. Shubham Sahu from 12:10, and that will be a pure hands-on session. In my session, I will try to give you at least a first taste of how a MongoDB query actually looks like. But more or less, this is a theoretical session, but I will try to spare about 15 minutes of time so that we can actually see how queries look in a MongoDB and how the outputs are being generated. Okay, and if you don't have, if you have not installed MongoDB till now, we can still have another option. There are a lot of online shells of MongoDB. One shell comes from the MongoDB official site itself. I will share the link. There is a small problem with that shell is that that shell leaves the connection very frequently actually. So you need to do your queries very fast. That's fine for a demonstrative purpose. You can just go. I have shared the queries for you, so you can just paste the queries. The session generally persists for about 5 to 7 minutes. You can see the output, have understanding, and come back. And even if the session is discontinued, we can just go back and then reconnect again. So even if you have not installed MongoDB, you can still be very active in this session because we will be using the online shell that does not require any kind of installation. Okay, so let's start with our session. In the last sessions, we already have discussion on the difference between SQL and NoSQL. So I will be just quickly touching upon this topic. So if we compare SQL versus NoSQL on a head-to-head basis, so the basic broad idea of bringing NoSQL databases were that SQL was designed in the era of 1970, and that was the time when client-server computing came into prevalence. Actually, the basic architecture of a SQL database was that all the data was stored in a central server, and the queries were being submitted to the server from client workstations. The server processes the query and sends back the result. The problem with this actually arose in the era of late 90s, and of course after that when internet became very popular. Now with internet and with web scale application, the problem was that uh, if you try to scale up SQL database, if you try to scale up RDBMS database, the scaling scheme that is actually used in RDBMS is
Sir, your
vertical
PPT
scaling.
is not visible. Sir,
Okay,
your PPT
I
is not
think,
visible.
okay. Is it visible now?
No, yes.
Okay, it's actually a PDF, not PPT. So I thought it would be easy to mark on PDF. And I will be sharing this PDF after the session. Okay. So the basic, the problem that arose with SQL was that when we talk about web scale databases, SQL data DBMS or SQL RDBMS softwares were not actually designed for scaling horizontally. They were designed for scaling vertically. So can any of you give me a quick one-line difference between vertical scaling and horizontal scaling in the context of computer systems? So what is the difference between vertical scaling and horizontal scaling? Yeah, any idea? Can any of you just give me one line difference between vertical scaling and horizontal scaling when we are discussing systems, or we are discussing about databases? Because this term was actually discussed in the session of yesterday. Okay, I will be helping you.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sir,
I
in
can
SQL
hear you.
database, vertical scaling means we are inserting new data in the column. Whereas in NoSQL, horizontal scaling means we are adding data in horizontal way, that is row way.
I'm afraid, sir, this is not exactly the answer. Actually, this is far away from. Yeah, please.
Sir, SQL database is relational analytical. There is no SQL database column family graph, document key value. That's what. Scale up and scale out is there.
Yes, sir. But madam, my question was exactly what the difference between scaling up and scaling out. Actually, vertical scaling is also known as scaling up, and horizontal scaling is and horizontal scaling is also known as scaling out. So the basic difference between scaling up and scaling out is that in scaling up, we actually try to increase the capability of our system. We actually try to increase the horsepower of our system. So we try to make our system more stronger by increasing the CPU, by increasing the primary memory, by increasing the network bandwidth. And when we talk about horizontal scaling means you are actually not increasing the horsepower of your system, but rather you are actually multiplying the units of computations that you have. That is actually you are deploying more number of commodity servers or more number of machines with the same capabilities that you initially had. So multiplying your computing resources by some number is actually horizontal scaling. आप यहाँ पे अपने सर्वर्स को बढ़ाते हैं, सर्वर के पावर को नहीं, एंड इन वर्टिकल स्केलिंग आप अपने सर्वर की कैपेबिलिटी को बढ़ाते हैं in terms of CPU, in terms of memory, in terms of network bandwidth. So the problem with vertical scaling is that there are physical and I will say there are physical and engineering limits that how much you can vertically scale a computer system. You cannot cross the physical limit of the clock cycle that a microprocessor can generate. There are physical or engineering limits to the primary memory that a CPU can have or a computer can have. There are, of course, limits of the network bandwidth that are provided by the telecom operators. So when the workload increases over a system, when the workload increases because of nowadays we have a lot of web applications running, and when we work with web scale data, the workload is increasing at such a fast rate that we cannot vertically scale with the same demands that is coming from the workload. So the only solution is to that increase the number of servers that we have. So this is basically the concept of horizontal scaling. We cannot increase the capability of our servers after a certain point, so we actually are increasing the number of servers doing the work. And when we increase the number of servers, that means now our database is going to be distributed, because now you have a distributed system that is providing you aggregate power of computation and to solve a particular, to actually host a particular application. Now, with this comes the concept of distributed databases. The SQL was actually a very popular query language, and RDBMS software actually dominated the market right from 1970s. But the problem with the RDBMS softwares was that they were not designed for horizontal scaling. So if you see from the late 2000s, to be very specific, from 2005 onwards, internet applications became very popular. Facebook and all that applications actually became a common man's daily routine, and now there was a lot of demand of databases that could be horizontally scaled, as well as there was some sort of capability to handle unstructured data also. So the primary difference between SQL and NoSQL, if we have a head-to-head comparison, is that NoSQL databases are designed for horizontal scaling. They do not have any schema. We will come to this topic once again, that what do I mean when I say that NoSQL databases does not have a schema. Actually, they have a schema, but the schema can be modified dynamically during your application execution. So you can actually change the schema of your database without taking your application to a downtime. So that's a very plus point when it comes to 24/7 support of web applications. In earlier applications, the database administrator had to actually shut down the application and then write a alter command or a modify command, make some changes in the schema, incorporate the new user requirements, and then the system was rebooted. And during this complete time, the system was in a downtime. But now with web applications like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, we cannot afford a downtime. We cannot shut down our system just to make some changes in the database. We want systems like schema changes, even while they are already executing in the front end. Another is that SQL databases were very, very strong when you talk about ACID transaction. You know what is ACID property. Can anybody quickly give me the full form of ACID property?
So atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability.
Yeah, so the drawback of NoSQL, let me introduce one of the drawback of NoSQL, because from yesterday we have been actually enduring SQL databases. We have been telling all the positive points of NoSQL databases. Now, let me introduce one drawback or one limitation of NoSQL. NoSQL databases are still not mature enough to handle ACID transactions. MongoDB have actually incorporated the support for ACID, but other databases, they are still not providing the full-fledged ACID support. We have something called as base that has been designed in contrast to ACID. It basically means eventually consistent. Yesterday we already had a discussion on what do you mean by strong consistency and eventual consistency. So consistency is still an issue in NoSQL databases. Please, this should be your takeaway point from this session, that NoSQL databases are actually giving a head-to-head competition with SQL in terms of being very flexible, providing very flexible schema, providing the power to horizontally scale up, but still consistency is an issue with most of the NoSQL databases. If you talk about real-time transaction support, once again, people are preferring MySQL, Oracle, and IBM DB2 rather than NoSQL. The basic structure of storing data in NoSQL, as you know, that there are 4 different types of NoSQL databases. Yesterday we had a session, on the first session. These are combinedly known as the NoSQL family. There is a common misconception when I talk to some junior faculties, they generally have a perception that NoSQL is once again a query language very similar to SQL. But let me clarify this. SQL is a query language that is used to interact with RDBMS database softwares. For example, we use SQL to interact with Oracle. We use SQL, a very similar syntax of SQL with slight modification to interact with MySQL. But NoSQL is not a language. Please take a note of this. NoSQL is not a query language. NoSQL is actually an umbrella term that denotes all those database systems that are other than the conventional RDBMS softwares. And under this umbrella, we have different types of database systems. Broadly, they can be classified into 4 categories, but sooner or later we will have other categories also coming up. The state of the art is that we have 4 categories right now. Document databases, these are the most common because of the ease of use and because they are very intuitive to learn. The basic idea of a document database is that data is stored in the form of documents. And the reason to select document is that you can actually map a document database to an object of some programming language. For example, if we are using MongoDB, MongoDB document can be easily mapped to a Java object or a Python object or a Ruby object. So this type of mapping is done by the programming language through the API, of course. Programming language designers, compiler writers, they provide very good APIs that can convert MongoDB objects to their native objects of that language. So this facilitates the connectivity between a programming language, the code written in a programming language with the MongoDB database or with some other document database. And once you have your database mapped into programming language objects, the execution of queries or the execution of the application becomes very, very fast. Because once the things are being converted into objects and objects are stored into the primary memory, the database system can actually execute the query very fast. And this is one of the reasons of the performance of MongoDB. MongoDB is actually very popular in the NoSQL community because of its high performance. The second category is graph databases. I will not elaborate this, but because tomorrow we are going to have 3 sessions on graph databases. One will be general session, and the second and third session will be specifically to the leading graph database right now, that is Neo4j. But the idea behind graph databases is that we store the data in graph. We use nodes and edges, and graph databases are typically suitable for situations where you have highly interrelated data. When the relation between the data is too much, then our SQL tabular based databases cannot represent that in an efficient way. We will have to incorporate a lot of foreign key and reference keys, and because of that there will be a lot of additional overhead of the system. Key value databases, once again, key value databases are more used to increase the performance of a system rather than being a full-fledged database. I will be myself taking a session, I think on Friday, on Redis. Redis is a very, very popular key value database. But please take a note of this. Key value systems or key value data stores, they actually induce a very high performance in search operations, because these key value databases are mostly on in-memory, like Redis. For example, Redis is an in-memory database. So when I say it's an in-memory database, that means the queries run from the RAM. The database is entirely stored on the RAM. Of course, you have the option to write in the persistent disk. You can actually save the data in disk, but there are various options that after how much time you want to write back the data to the disk. But the broader line is that the data is actually stored on RAM rather than on disk. Now this is actually an entirely different approach than the conventional RDBMS softwares. In the days of Oracle and MySQL, data was always saved to disk. But now with a lot of new technologies coming up, in-memory databases are a new trending technology. Because the entire database is in memory, the operations are very, very fast. Specifically, the operations are fast when the read and write operations are coming in the same order, in the order in which the data has been inserted. That is known as the insert order. White column stores are once again databases where you need to store the data column-wise rather than row-wise. Conventionally, we have been storing data row by row. But in OLAP operations, in operations where there are large number of rows, it has been seen that just transposing the idea and storing the data column-wise gives performance benefits rather than storing it row-wise. The examples of white column stores are Cassandra and HBase, and you will be having sessions on Cassandra and HBase on, I think, Saturday. So these are the 4 categories. Our topic for discussion today is document databases. So what exactly is a document database? These are, of course, non-relational, because NoSQL databases are non-relational trivially by definition. And in most of the document databases, apart from MongoDB, if you see other examples like CouchDB, document databases will store the data in documents. And these documents, they more or less are of the format very similar to JSON. Now, can you, any of you tell me what exactly is JSON? Any idea about JSON? Any idea about what is a JSON? Okay, so let's do a very quick experiment to understand what is JSON. I'm sharing a link, and I will request the participants to please open this link. I'm sharing this link on the chat box. Can you just open this link? So I will request all of you to please open this link. I'm already in this link. And let me know when you are done. Okay, so have you got the link? Can I have a response? Can you have you got the link?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is basically a free website, and this can convert a XML code to a JSON code. And there are actually a lot of websites doing the same thing. So let's quickly write a small XML schema and see how does actual JSON looks like. So just type this with me. I am trying to model an employee with only one attribute, that is employee number 101P20. So can you just type this? This is straightforward XML. I have not included the XML version and DTD definition, etc. I've just written a very, very simple XML document. You know, in XML, everything starts with a tag and the tag must be closed. Tags are case sensitive and tags can also be nested. So we have a parent tag EMP, and the EMP tag has an attribute e-number, employee number, and that has the value 10120. So can you just type this? We'll wait here for 1 minute. This is a very simple XML document. Yeah. So should I share this in the chat? Okay, I have shared that too in the chat. Now, see, there is a button down the line. You can have a button XML to JSON. Can you just click on this button? It's green in color. XML to JSON. If you just click on this button, this website will generate the JSON equivalent of your XML. So here we have the JSON equivalent of the XML document that we have just now created. I'm also copying this one in the output, in the chat. So just look at the JSON and the XML. Both of them actually serve almost the same purpose. They are vendor neutral, or I should say architecture neutral formats for information interchange between two agents or two applications. They are text-based, so you don't require any specific software to read JSON or XML. As you can see, I just typed the normal JSON. I can type this in a notepad and a WordPad, and most of the programming languages will provide API to read and parse XML as well as JSON documents. So it's more of a standard that has been accepted by the industry rather than the performance of JSON. The industry has accepted XML, and now JSON has become more popular. If you know how to write a web services always return their data in JSON format. REST APIs, if you have worked with REST APIs. So JSON has now become the industry standard to interchange data between two applications. Now, so are you getting the output? So are
Yes,
you
sir.
getting the, yeah, now
Yes,
I will
sir.
be just I will be just modifying this XML document because this is the this will form the base for today's practical sessions also. Now let's add another attribute of employee, and that's the name. And I am adding my name. So I have included another attribute, employee name, and in XML it's mandatory to close the tag. So employee name has to be closed also, and the value of this tag is Sudeep. So if now I look at the JSON equivalent of this, now look at this and let me indent it properly. Now look at this. JSON works on the concept of key value pairs. This particular is a document, and the document is delimited by this outer pair of braces. The complete code inside the outer pair of braces is the JSON document. It's known as a JSON document because you can actually send the document to some other end and you can read the document here. And inside document, you will always have key value pairs. In this particular document, we have one key value pair. Can any of you tell me what is the key value pair here? Can any of you tell me what is the key value pair?
Number and value.
E-number
No.
and e-name.
No. In contrary to the belief, e-number and e-name are not
EMP, sir, EMP.
Yeah, exactly. EMP is the actual key here. So the key is actually EMP, and the value starts after this colon. So the key EMP has been provided a value, and the complete thing, this complete thing that I'm actually selecting with my mouse right now, this complete selected portion is the value for the key EMP. So it's like you are giving some value to variable EMP. Our programming language is kaisa likhenge, EMP is assigned to something. So just consider it very similar to that. EMP is the key, and the value is once again encapsulated within another braces. So the value itself is a JSON. So I want to demonstrate here that we can actually have values of keys as JSON documents itself, and this is known as nesting of JSON. And this forms the base of something called as embedded documents in MongoDB. So let's see this structure once again. The key here is EMP. The colon here stands for very similar to what equal to operators does. So actually you are giving the value to this key EMP. The value itself is a complete JSON document by itself. Now, if I talk about this particular JSON document, just focus on this particular JSON document. This document has two key value pairs. Can you identify the key value pairs inside this JSON document?
ENO and ename.
In number.
Yeah. ENO, employee number, and employee name. These are the two key value pairs. The first key value pair is employee number. The key is employee number. The value is 10120. And the second key is employee name with the value Sudeep. Now, let's go and add some more details here. I'm adding mobile number, my mobile number. So let us consider that I have two mobiles. My first mobile number is 12345 and the second mobile number is 8889. Now, I have included two more tags. Both of them are actually same. Both of them are mobile tags. A tag has to be embedded in a XML. It's a mandatory rule of XML. Otherwise, the XML file will not be called as well formed. So I have two mobile numbers. Now see how does JSON considers this. Now, what do you notice here? How has JSON responded to this? When you have two tags,
So one key with multiple values.
One key with multiple values, exactly. So I'm sharing this on the chat also to save your time. You can just directly copy this to the. Okay. Now, if you see the output here, then we have a new thing. We have a square bracket here. This is array. You know, if you know a little bit of programming, arrays are always expressed in square brackets. So we have actually introduced a JSON array here. Mobile number from the XML document, the XML parser will be telling the JSON that the document tree of this particular document will be that there are two attributes mobile. They are actually the same attributes. So this attribute is a multi-valued attribute here. And JSON represents a multi-valued attribute in the form of an array. So here, now the employee key has the value. This complete is the value of the employee key. And inside the value, we have three key value pairs. The first key value pair is employee number with the value 10120. The second key value pair is employee number with the value Sudeep. The third key value pair, please note here, the third key value pair is the key mobile with the value as an array. So this complete array containing two members, is actually the value of the key mobile, MOB. Okay, so this is how JSON documents are created. You have documents encapsulated within braces. You have key value pairs. You have some values are actually arrays. Some values are JSON documents themselves. Now coming back to our discussion of document databases. Document databases uses format very similar to JSON, and in this case, in case of a MongoDB, we call it as BSON. BSON. It actually stands for binary serialization of the object. If you know Java, you must be knowing what you mean by serializing an object. An object's data is actually spread in the memory like a graph. To write or read an object to a file system or to transfer the object's data in the network, we need to serialize the object in the form of a sequence of bytes. That is known as object serialization. And BSON actually stands for binary object serialization. It's very similar to JSON. Now, document databases are typically useful in systems like catalogs, product catalogs. Say, for example, you are designing an e-commerce site like Amazon.com, and you need to design a product catalog, user profiles in LinkedIn, and content management systems. Content management systems are systems that maintain a lot of documents inside them. Very good examples of content management systems are Joomla, Drupal, and WordPress. You might have heard about WordPress. It's a very popular framework also to create free websites. So these are actually, at the end of the day, they actually save your data in the form of documents. Now, what is so specific about a catalog in Amazon.com or a user profile in LinkedIn? What is the peculiar property in these use cases that document databases fit in these situations? The property is that if you think about a product catalog, different products will have different attributes. A mobile phone will have attribute like the manufacturer, the RAM, the CPU, the battery life, whereas a book will have a attribute like author, title, ISBN code, price, edition number. So when you have Amazon.com has a range of 6 crore plus products. Different products have different attributes. So how will you model this into a relational database? How will you model this in terms of a table? If you make a column as author, mobile phone does not have a column author. And if you make a column as CPU and RAM, books does not have CPU and RAM. So when you have to model different entities that have different kinds of attributes, and another point is that the attributes may change dynamically, you need to have a NoSQL database, because NoSQL database does not have a rigid structural schema. You can start with actually absolutely nothing, and then you can just modify your schema. So there is no rigid schema that verifies that whether the data is as per the schema definitions or not. So specifically talking about MongoDB, MongoDB is actually the most popular document databases. In the document databases category, we have other softwares also, but MongoDB is dominating the market, primarily because of its high performance, and also because it provides almost consistent transaction support. So MongoDB is a general purpose. It's a document-based distributed database designed for the ease of development and scaling. So the primary USP of MongoDB is scaling. And can you tell me what kind of scaling I'm talking about here, vertical or horizontal?
Horizontal.
Yeah, because NoSQL databases are actually scaled up horizontally. So MongoDB is primarily designed for high performance and very easy horizontal scaling. You can find the official documentation and the software in this site. Some specific features about MongoDB: it's written in C++. You can actually guess that, because as you go down in the abstraction layers, as you go near to the hardware, the performance of the system increases. So C++ and C are languages that are known for high performance because of they're very close to hardware. Python languages like Python are actually they don't give very promising performance because they have multiple abstraction layers. These layers make the programming very easy, but they actually give a performance penalty. So MongoDB is designed written in C++ because of high performance. MongoDB is cross-platform, so actually you can deploy MongoDB on Linux systems as well as on Windows. A new thing in MongoDB is that it does not have join. In fact, most of the NoSQL databases does not have join. Now this point is not absolutely correct here. MongoDB does support something called as lookup operations, and lookups are almost same as left outer join. You can broadly say that NoSQL databases does not depend on join, and or we are not compelled to write a join. We have other alternatives also, but MongoDB do support something that is very similar to a left outer join, known as lookup operations. Another reason for the popularity of MongoDB is that it has most of the programming languages like Java, Python, Ruby, JavaScript. They provide very rich API to connect with MongoDB. MongoDB is free. We have the free edition also, known as the community edition, but we also have the enterprise edition. So it's free for our use. You can use it for any purpose, but the enterprise edition is paid. And MongoDB also comes as a database as a service in cloud. These are the 5 points that are promoted by the MongoDB community as their pros, their positive points. First is ad hoc query. Ad hoc query is nothing new. If you have ever connected a front-end application to a back-end application, you know that in Oracle, in the SQL editor, we write queries like select asterisk from EMP where employee number equal to say 101. But when it comes to writing the code in a front-end application in a programming language like Java, we can write, and we actually write queries like select asterisk from EMP where employee number equal to plus, and then we provide a variable, and the value of that variable is actually provided at the execution time. It either comes from the code itself or it comes from some GUI form. So this type of queries are known as ad hoc queries because the query is completed only at the runtime. The parameter of the query is also only provided at the runtime. The query is quickly executed with the parameters being substituted, and then the result is displayed. So if you run an ad hoc query multiple times, you may get different results because of two things. First, the state of the database may be changing at the back end, and the second, the variable that you are supplying to the ad hoc query may be changing on every call. Indexing, for any database to give, can anybody tell me what is the purpose of making index in a database? What is the purpose of making indexes in any database?
Sir,
Why do you
faster
make
retrieval.
index?
For searching purpose, faster
Fast
retrieval.
query.
Yeah.
For fast retrieval of data.
Yeah, fast retrieval, fast query. So indexes basically, they are sorted one or some multiple columns, partial subsets of the actual database, and they are sorted on one key or on multiple keys, and they quickly provide us pointers to the actual data. So they save our time rather than going record by record in a DBMS. We can actually consult the index first and then actually locate the data in the record. MongoDB has a very good support for index. It has a lot of different types of index, like single, I will not say column here, it's known as single field, but the analogy is single column. It multiple field, multiple key. It has geospatial index also for geographic queries on the geographical domain. It has special indexes for string queries, because when you work with string, there are a lot of regular expressions being involved. It has indexes for working with hash structures known as hash indexes. Another property, or another two properties actually, that are very, very famous in MongoDB, and whenever you are teaching MongoDB to your students, I think this is the point where you should stress upon. That is replication and sharding. Now, these two notions are used in MongoDB for performance gains. Replication is basically keeping multiple copies of your database. You create a replica of your database and keep it somewhere in a different server, primarily because of backup. And second, if you are having a search query, if you're having a read query actually, now if the database state is not changed, then the read query can be either be served from any of the server that hosts the database or hosts that particular part of the database. So replication can actually help you speed up responding to queries, but there are some additional issues that get involved when you replicate data, because the fundamental property of computer science, whether it's caching at the microprocessor level or caching at the geographical level, whenever you have multiple copies of the same data, can you tell me what is the problem that we encounter? Whenever you have multiple copies of the same data, whenever you have replicas of the same data, what is the problem that we encounter?
Data inconsistency.
Data inconsistency, yes. Right from starting from cache coherence problem to data inconsistency in distributed databases. The problem is how to handle with situations in where the data at one particular site has been modified and the modification has not been propagated to the other site. So replication, on one hand, it provides you performance gains. On the other hand, replication comes with some additional overhead. Sharding is actually just the opposite of replication. Sharding is fragmenting your database, breaking your database into multiple units, keeping them into different servers, keeping a track that where you have kept which database, which part of the database. This is because you can actually serve two queries that tries to access different part of your database. If I have 1 million records and I keep all the record in one particular server, and I have to serve two queries. The first query is accessing the top part of my database, and the second query is accessing the last part of my database. What is the point of making one query wait? See the query data that where this part of the database that the query is looking for is situated, and then redirect the query to that particular server that can actually respond to the query. So this primarily, the idea is known as sharding. We will discuss this in detail. MongoDB is also known for good load balancing. So you have community enterprise as well as MongoDB hosted on cloud also. The cloud service of MongoDB is known as Atlas. So I have already discussed this. How does a document look in JSON? The entire document is encapsulated within braces. You have key value pairs. In MongoDB, we call it as field and value rather than key value. But you can use that word interchangeably. So you have field as name and value as SIU. then comma separated by another value pair, field value pair, and field value pair. Which of the field value pair is a multi-valued attribute? Which of the field value pair is a multi-valued attribute in this in the screen that I'm displaying right now? Can you identify? Groups. So if you try to model this particular data, in Oracle or in SQL, you will have to keep 2 columns for every student. The first will be group 1 and the second will be group 2. And you can observe that not all students will have 2 groups. Some of the students may have only 1 group. In that case, the second column will actually go empty for most of the students. But in JSON, it's very easy to model this. In MongoDB, it's very easy to model this. We can actually keep this kind of field in an array, in a JSON array. This is how a document structure. This is the generic form of a document structure. Field value pairs. Now, what are collections? One document represents one entity. You can consider a document, one document as one page of your register or one page of a particular ledger. So in a register, say one page describes one employee, then the entire register will be known as the collection. So collection basically is a group of documents. You can see that we have different documents representing different employees. These are actually students, and these collectively form the collection. So can you tell me what is the SQL or the RDBMS analogy for collection? Which particular thing in RDBMS?
Table.
It's actually actually table, but file is also somewhat correct.
It is a row.
Yeah, file is also somewhat. Yeah, no. No, one row will be one document.
Yeah.
No,
one document.
Yeah, one row will be one document, and the entire table is actually the collection. And somebody, one madam said that it can be taken as file. So I will say you are correct, because file also has the complete records. So you can also say that file, but I asked my question as what was the analogy from RDBMS? And RDBMS does not work with files. Okay, so in the context of RDBMS, in the space of RDBMS terminology, the analogy for MongoDB collections is actually tables. So we have a MongoDB database. A MongoDB database can contain one or more collections. You can think of these as tables, and collections will contain multiple documents. It is similar to the RDBMS structure. In Oracle, you have a database. Inside the database, we have a lot of database objects like tables, triggers, constraints, indexes, and inside the table, you can have multiple records. So if we talk about the analogy, the head-to-head comparison between in the terminology, the database word is common between RDBMS terminology and MongoDB terminology. The table of RDBMS becomes collection here. Both of them actually are group of documents or group of records. They basically are representing multiple entities together, multiple entities that are logically related or that are semantically same. In RDBMS, one particular row represents one particular employee or one particular instance of the employee type. In MongoDB, we have the equivalent as document. In RDBMS, we have column, and here we call it as field. Indexes are common in both. In RDBMS, we join tables. In MongoDB, we don't actually have joins. We have alternative of join as embedded document, but you can do something called as lookup operation that are actually left outer joins. Keys are present in both as SQL as well as MongoDB. MongoDB also provides a default primary key known as _ID. And aggregate functions like group by, maximum, minimum, count, sum, they are present in both. But MongoDB also has a feature in which you can combine multiple aggregate functions in the form of a pipeline, and the output of one particular pipeline, one particular operation can be fed as an input to the other operation. So it's like a pipeline of the CPU. We can actually combine group by, sum, count, minimum, maximum, all these aggregate operations in the form of a pipeline, and the outputs can be cascaded to form the complete pipeline. And the advantage of doing this is that the MongoDB query planner can work out the most optimized plan to execute the query. Once again, there is the issue of performance optimization. Now, so any queries so far? I can quickly take up some queries within 2 minutes. Any queries so far? So are we clear with the syntax of?
Sir, what is the sir?
Yeah, ma'am.
What is the difference between RDBMS primary key and MongoDB primary key? I don't understand.
Madam, primary key is the same. Here also the primary key is serving the same purpose of identifying the documents uniquely within a collection. But in MongoDB, even if you don't define a primary key explicitly, MongoDB automatically has a primary key and built-in primary key known as _ID. I will show you that right now. Okay, we will see this in a demonstration. And but you also have the provision to declare your own private primary key. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
So now can you see this particular table? This is a table. This type of tables are very common. This type of tables are what we work with in a SQL database. So look at the entity that this table is representing. We are representing some objects. And we are taking the particular case of a record of notebook. Now we have 50 quantity of notebook. The size is 8.5 into 11 centimeter. The status is available. I hope this is available. The tags are ruled and perforated. So this particular notebook is ruled as well as perforated, and the rating of the notebook is 8 by customer. So if you look at this particular attribute, size, this is a composite attribute. This is a composite attribute because this attribute can be decomposed into 3 attributes: the height, the width. I hope this is height and width of the, this is the length and width of notebook. So this may be 11 centimeter into 8 centimeter. So the length is 11, the height, the width is 8.5. Plus we have another attribute, sub-attribute actually, that is the unit, because you need to mention whether this is centimeter or inches. So this particular attribute is a composite attribute that can be decomposed into 3 sub-attributes of length, width, and inch and units. Similarly, this attribute tag is a multi-valued attribute because you can have multiple tags for the same object. For instance, here we have notebook being tagged as ruled as well as perforated. So what do you do with this kind of attributes in a SQL database? SQL database में आप कैसे handle करते हैं इसको?
By creating 2 records.
By creating
2 columns.
Yeah,
by creating 2 columns.
Yeah. You need to introduce some more columns like tag 1, tag 2, and ... Or alternatively, you can have another table also, and then you can map that particular tagging of the object with this table using foreign key concept. And in case of a size, you need to have multiple records: notebook with size 1, notebook with size 2. So at the point here is that either you will end up with multiple rows or multiple columns, half of which will go wasted because not all objects will have multiple tags, or you will introduce additional tables, and then you need to normalize that, and because of strict rules of normalization, you will end up having multiple tables. And the problem with normalization is that normalization is very fine when we talk about insert and delete and update anomalies. Normalization is very, very desired, but with normalization, we end up having multiple tables. And when it comes to querying tables, queries that need data from multiple tables, they end up having joins, and joins are very computationally costly. Whenever you work out with a join, it starts with a Cartesian join, then filter, then projection, and then another filter. So joins are very, very computationally costly, and they take up a lot of computation time at the back end. So the primary idea of NoSQL database is to avoid joins so that we do not compromise on performance. So NoSQL, how does NoSQL respond to this? Now this is the answer of NoSQL, specifically MongoDB. What NoSQL says is that if you have that is multi-valued, this one tag, you can actually mention all the different values of that particular field in a JSON array. Similarly, if you have attribute that is composite, you can just decompose that itself into a JSON document. So this is very similar to what I showed in our EMP example. Just recall the EMP example. The key was EMP and the value of EMP was actually an entire JSON document itself. So we had a JSON document nested inside another JSON document. So this is also called as document embedding. So once again, you can see that the size of a notebook is itself a JSON document. So we have encapsulated that one inside a braces. So we have a document inside a document, and that is the idea of embedded documents. So in this way, only one single document can model the complete scenario. In SQL, you would have end up with multiple columns, rows, and tables. Now, what do you mean by MongoDB? As when I say MongoDB is schemaless, it means that when I say MongoDB is schemaless, that means the collections don't have a rigid schema. Now let's see what do you mean by schemaless. So I am sharing a link. Friends, I'm sharing a link. Just click on this link. Now this is actually the online shell. Okay, I don't think I have pasted it properly. Yeah, participant, just click on this link. Okay. So I'm sharing this on the WhatsApp actually. I have shared a link in WhatsApp. Can you just click on that link? Participant, are you getting the link that I have shared in WhatsApp?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so just click on that link. That will give you an online shell to work MongoDB queries. This shell actually frequently loses connection. So we will do a quick short exercise of less than 5 minutes on this shell. And the data will not persist. So whatever you will write, you will have to write it again if this loses connection. So that's why I have shared the document with you. Please open the PDF document that I have shared with you. The document that has the MongoDB queries. Now, let's have the first taste of how does a MongoDB query looks like. You need to click here. You need to click here to start. I have clicked here. You can see that I am being connected to that shell. Okay, so are you people connected? Just click on that shell. Just click on that shell. You will be connected to that shell. So can you just start with the first query? Can we start with the first query? Just click on this link that I have shared on WhatsApp. You will get a MongoDB shell. Just click on that to get connected. This is an online shell to write basic queries. This shell very frequently loses connection. We will just do a small exercise on this. So can we start with the first query?
Yes, sir.
Can I have a response?
Yes,
Yeah.
sir.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Look what I'm doing. Just write down this query use BIT. If you know MySQL, you know what is the use command does. It actually mounts a database. So here we are mounting a database BIT. If the database is not there, MongoDB will create the database right now. So don't worry about the database. Just write use BIT. You can give any name. No semicolons, no double quotes. Use BIT. Now see how easy it is to create a database here. I'm writing db dot create collection. Now please mind the syntax. Please mind the syntax. Create collection is written very similar to the syntax that you use in Java. The syntax that you use in a Java method name. So I'm writing the query here, db dot create collection. So this command is sufficient enough to create a collection for you. If you can recall in RDBMS in SQL a table, you need to work out and first of all find out what is the schema of the table. आपको ये पता करना पड़ता है कितने कॉलम होंगे, कॉलम के टाइप्स क्या होंगे, की कौन सा होगा, प्राइमरी की, सेकंड कंपोजिट होगा कि सिंगल कॉलम का होगा, कंस्टेंट्स क्या होंगे, you always have the option to add these things after the table has been created using alter and modify commands, but still while at the time of the creation, you should at least know one column. You cannot create a table without any columns. So the schema should be somewhat known beforehand. But you see that in MongoDB, we have actually created our first collection without even knowing what is the schema. When I say MongoDB is schemaless, I mean this. Now let's add a record. So write down db dot, the name of the collection, that is emp dot, and this is case sensitive. Please mind this is case sensitive. I will share this query, don't worry. So let me type this in the chat box itself. So the first query is db dot, our collection was emp dot. The query is also known as insert query. So this is very similar to SQL. And I'm writing emp number colon 101. So this is the field value pair, ename colon double quote sweep. Then this braces is actually closing the JSON document, and the parenthesis is closing the function call of insert. So just execute this query. I'm inserting this query, I'm pasting this query from the chat. Okay, I think I have not pressed the submit button yet. Okay. So participants, I have shared the query that I want you to run. So, okay. So are you getting a feedback from MongoDB? Right result? Are you getting the output like right result and inserted one? And inserted means the number of documents inserted.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
So actually you have now please take a note of this. You have inserted a document inside a column, a collection, and you still don't know what is the schema of the collection. आपको ये नहीं पता आपके टेबल में कौन-कौन से कॉलम है, टाइप क्या है, but आपने insert query कर दिया. This is not possible. This was not possible in SQL. So this is what, when we say that NoSQL databases are schemaless, this is what we mean. You don't need to think about the schema. You can straight away start with adding records. Now let's do a find query. I will once again write the query in the chat. The query is db. db means the current database object. We are working with BIT. So db dot, the collection name is emp dot find, and find is a function that this find is actually equivalent to select asterisk from the table name, or I should say select asterisk from the collection. So db dot the database dot the name of the collection dot the name of the function, and we are using a select query here. See, I am getting the output, and if you don't like the output, you like prettier things in life, you can just cascade the output of this query and append that with a pretty command. Pretty will make your output look prettier. And when I say it will look prettier, that means it will look very similar to what you are in the habit of looking in JSON documents. So the pretty command will make your output look like the standard JSON style. So let me know if you are done with up to this. So when we write a find query, so find is like writing a select query. This is like selection. You can actually mention the criteria to find. In that case, it will be like select asterisk from table name where something condition. But right now we have just mentioned we have just used the find without any condition. So this is a straightforward select asterisk from emp type of query. Now the magic comes there. Let us insert another query, another document with employee number 102 and with employee name Dinesh. So Dinesh is my colleague, SQL expert at BIT. So see the difference. And what I am doing here is that at the time of insertion of the document Dinesh, I am also inserting age, and Dinesh is 40 years old. So I'm actually trying to insert a document with 3 field value pairs into the same collection in which there is already a document and that has 2 field value pair, employee number and name. And there was no talk of age of Sudeep, but in the case of Dinesh, we have also another field value pair age. And let us run this query. Okay, So there's a syntax error actually. Okay. So I'm also writing this query in the chat. So the next query was, I inserted another document. I think Kaitali Chaudhary madam has shared. Okay, that's it. So I have inserted another document with employee number, and they can be in any order as actually. The order is not important. Employee name as Dinesh and age as 40. Sir, I hope you will not mind me disclosing your actual age. db.insert, and yeah, I hope I have not taken any typo mistakes. Yeah, so and after that, if you just try to do another find query, so now I have two different documents. Participants, are you getting this output? Now I have two different documents inside the collection EMP, but they have different schema. The document Sudeep has employee number and employee name. The document Dinesh has number, name, and age. So let me know when you are done up to this point. So the point that I will like you to take a note here is that different documents can have different schema. And please take a note of this, that MongoDB has automatically inserted a new field value pair known as _ID. Now, a few minutes before, there was a question, what is the default primary key? We were discussing about primary key. Madam, this was the key that I was talking about. MongoDB automatically inserts a primary key with every document, with every collection. And you can see that with every document, this key is different. So this is used as a unique identifier. We have the provision to make our own keys also. I can make this employee number as a atomic primary key, or I can actually make composite primary keys also, very similar to what you do in Oracle. But by default, MongoDB will generate a primary key. This is a 32-bit primary key generated for every document. Because when you have documents and documents are stored in different partitions known as shards, you need to identify each document accurately. So coming back to the point. So you now know MongoDB, why MongoDB is known as schemaless. Embedded documents, I have already discussed what is an embedded document. You can have a document inside a document. Look at this. Can you tell me which document has been embedded inside which document? What are the two embedded documents in this particular scenario?
Contract and access.
Contact and access.
This is similar to structure inside a structure in C programming. We have a MongoDB document that is anonymous. We don't have the name. That has a key value pair username with the value 123. We have an embedded JSON document contact that itself is a JSON document that encapsulates that models the contact of an employee. And we have another embedded document access. In contrast to embedded document, you can also have something called as references in MongoDB. Now, this is very, very similar to the concept of foreign keys in RDBMS. You can see we have a user document. This represents or models a user. You have a contact document and you have an access document. So rather than embedding the entire contact and access details inside the user document, what we are doing is we are representing them as entirely different documents, and we are embedding this key here. So using this key and doing us operations similar to a left outer join, in MongoDB, this operation is known as a lookup operation. We can actually combine all these documents. So MongoDB does support a join known as lookup operation. This is very similar to a left outer join, but for that you need to have a common attribute between these two, between the two collections that you are joining, and references are actually based on this lookup operations. Okay, the advantage of using embedded documents over references. You might be wondering why we need to embed a document inside another document when we can have a reference very similar to SQL, or when we have embedded, then why we are having references. Okay, so can you guess which one will be better in terms of performance? इन दोनों में से परफॉर्मेंस किसका अच्छा होगा सिलेक्ट क्वेरीज पे, अगर आप एम्बेड कर रहे हैं तब या आप रेफरेंसेस कर रहे हैं तब? Can you guess the performance, better performance? Which one will give a better performance?
Sir, embedded.
Yeah, you are correct. Embedded documents. Can you tell me why?
So because it need to search only one document.
Yeah, but this performance comes with the additional cost of increase in size of the document. So you are correct, sir. Actually, MongoDB read and write operations are atomic when it comes to single document. So that means when MongoDB starts to write on a document, on a single document, the transaction is atomic. There cannot be interleaving of two transactions writing on single document. So because of this, if the entire document is at one place, it will be less time consuming as compared to joining these two documents. I mentioned this at the start of this session that joins are very costly, because for a join, for a lookup operation, lookups are basically joins. For a lookup operation, we need to find out this document. We need to find out this document. Both of them can come from different servers. Then we need to join them. Then we need to find out the result and do all kind of filtering. But in case of embedded documents, we only need to find out one complete document. The document will be, of course, lengthy, but once we locate the document, the query can be run at an atomic scale and we will have performance benefits. So in terms of performance, embedded documents are always better. So these are the CUT queries. MongoDB, when we say CUT queries, it means create, read, update, delete. I have already given you a first test of how does a MongoDB query looks like. In the second session, Mr. Shubham Sahu will actually demonstrate you. It's very easy to write MongoDB read queries. Basically, what you do is you provide the criteria inside the find method. Update is also very easy. We use the set method for update, and deletes are also very easy. So I will be skipping this part. We already have done a very simple CUT queries. This is once again the semantic structure of how does a query look. This is the insert query. We have already seen a demonstration. Can you tell me what is the name of the collection used in this query? What is the name of the collection used in this insert query?
Users.
Yeah, it's actually users. So the syntax is database. DB stands for the name of the correct database. It points to the current database instance. db.users is the database. Then we have the insert command. The complete command comes inside parenthesis, and then we need to have a JSON document. The complete JSON document will be inserted. Sorry. Once again, the update query. Can you tell me which record of our collection will be updated in this query? This is very intuitive. Which record or which records? Sorry, which not I should not call records. Which documents of our collection will be updated in this query? Which documents of our collection will be updated in this query? It's very intuitive.
So designation.
Employee salary is greater than 18,000.
Yeah, exactly. So look at the first part. The first part in the update query is the update criteria. Don't worry about this. In the second session, you will do this practically. But the first part in the update query is the update criteria. This is used to match and find all those documents that actually are required to be updated. And the second part after this comma, this tells you what updation do you actually want. And this multi is attribute that sets whether you want to update multiple documents or a single document. So in this query, all those documents are being searched which have salary field greater than 18,000. So हम उन documents को ढूंढ रहे हैं जिनकी salary 18,000 से ज़्यादा है, and then we are setting their designation as manager. So this looks like very complicated at the first glance, but after writing one or two queries, this will become very easy. Try to break down this in terms of JSON document. Try to see this in terms of field value pairs rather than seeing this as a query. MongoDB views are very, very similar to Oracle view. These are actually queries that are stored. Whenever you try to run the view, the query is executed at the backend, and you are provided with the current output according to the current state of the database. In Oracle, you have two kinds of views: read-only views as well as updatable views. But in MongoDB, you cannot update a view. So you only have views that can be used as a view. You can only use the view to view some data from the collection, from the database. We have already discussed ad hoc query. Ad hoc queries are queries that have some placeholders in the form of variables. The value of these variables can be provided from either the command line or from some programming language variable, and these queries will be then executed and the response will be given back to the application. Regex is regular expression. If you know automata theory or if you have worked with SQL like queries, you know what does the percent wildcard characters done in a SQL query. Regex are very important when you are working with string. When you are searching strings, most of the time you need to work with patterns, and to denote a pattern mathematically we use regular expression. The MongoDB regular expression library supports the entire set of regular expressions. You have all kind of wildcard characters like the substitutes for percent and underscore. So I'm skipping this part. You can see the official documentation. Now I will come to the most important part of this session that I will like you to please pay attention, and I have a working example of this. Now we have something called as aggregation pipeline, and we also have something called as MapReduce in MongoDB, and these two are alternative to each other. So let us see the first part. What is the aggregation pipeline? So basically an aggregation pipeline will be some aggregate operations that have been cascaded one after the another, and the output of one stage will be presented as an input to the other stage. For example, here you can see that the collection is being submitted to the project operation. Project is like, when I write a query in MongoDB, Oracle, select employee number, comma, employee name from EMP. This is projection of 2 columns. Similarly, in MongoDB, you can project some of the field value pairs from the collection. So then the output of the project is given to a match. Match is basically a find query. Then the output of the match is given to a group by query, and then the output of the group by is given to sort. So you can actually cascade n number of stages, and finally you can get the output. The advantage of using MongoDB aggregate command or aggregate functions is that once you aggregate the complete set of operations, you give this query to MongoDB. MongoDB has an internal query planner, and this query planner will find out the most optimized plan of running these stages. The plan will actually consider the total cost of running this query, all the stages, and the query planner will quickly find out the execution plan that will be optimized for both time as well as space. Because when you work with lookup operations, when you merge two collections, you may end up generating collections that are not small enough to be stored in a primary memory. So time and space, both constraints have to be considered. So MongoDB internally find out the best possible plan to work out these stage of aggregate functions. So this is the example of a MongoDB aggregate query. If you see this example, this has 2 stages. The first stage is a match query, and we are actually interested in finding out all documents who have status as A. A might be standing for available. And the second one is a group by query. We are grouping all the records on the basis of their customer ID. Now there are 2 stages. The first was the match all the documents and find out those documents that have the status field as A, and then the output of this query will be passed on to another stage that will be actually doing the group by query. So this query is actually equivalent to the SQL query. Select customer ID, sum amount from the table total, where total is the alias name for the output column, from the table orders, where the status is A, and group by customer ID. We are doing the same thing. If you look at the Oracle query, SQL query, first of all, we are filtering out those records that contain have the status as A. So in MongoDB, this is the part. The match query is looking after this part. It's trying to bring those documents that have the status as A, and then in the SQL part, we are grouping that in terms of customer ID. So in MongoDB, this is the group function, the group operation, and the group operation is grouping in terms of this field, that is the customer ID. After grouping, we need to perform another aggregate function with the grouping itself, that is the sum function. in SQL, you mentioned this with the select part. In MongoDB, this is passed on with the grouping itself, so that once again there can be internal optimization, and we are displaying the amount as a total field in the output. Similarly, in the SQL part, we are displaying the sum as total column. This is the column alias. So this is the SQL equivalent of this aggregate pipeline query. Now, pipelines are basically used for the optimization. So the MongoDB query planner can internally optimize and find out the best possible plan to run this query. Now, we have another alternative to pipelines. If you don't want to use pipeline queries, you can use something that is very similar to a pipeline, but less computationally less. I should say that performance-wise, it's not as good as aggregate pipelines. But you can see what are the pros and cons of this, and this is known as the MapReduce query. So, can any of you who can tell me what is a MapReduce in one line? Any idea about MapReduce? Any idea about what is a? Yeah.
It used in Hadoop for map anything and reduce this.
Yeah. So MapReduce
in a document, if there has some text, if there has repetition of text, then it will map this repetition and reduce it in numbers.
Yeah, excellent, madam. So MapReduce is actually a framework for working with large volumes of data, and the basic concept is to map blocks of data to different nodes of the cluster, and this is done using key value pairs. Once again, every node is provided with one key and some corresponding values. The nodes of the cluster then, in a parallel manner, they do some processing on those key value pairs, and then all of the result from all of these nodes is mapped into one single result. And this was suggested by Google, and Hadoop is basically one implementation of the MapReduce framework. So Hadoop is actually implemented, one implementation. Hadoop says that I will implement the MapReduce, and Hadoop is a Java implementation of MapReduce. So MongoDB also supports the MapReduce paradigm for running queries. And of course, if you are working with MapReduce queries, then it makes only sense when you're working with aggregate queries, aggregation like sum, count, finding the maximum, finding the minimum of some set of documents. So look at this query. This is actually the MapReduce equivalent of the aggregate pipeline that we saw here. If you remember this query, we were first of all picking up those documents for which the status is A. Then we were grouping them into different grouping them on the basis of their customer IDs, and then we were finding the total amount for a particular customer ID. So this is the MapReduce equivalent of this. In MongoDB MapReduce, we need to define two functions. These are basically JavaScript functions. One function will be used as the mapper, and the second function will be used as the reducer. So the mapper function will be used by the nodes of the cluster, and they will do this function. They will execute this function parallelly on the set of documents that they have been provided. And the reduce function will actually take the results from each of the cluster, from each of the nodes of the cluster, and then reduce that into one single output. So the output of reduce will be one single. So this is how an aggregate function works. You have more than one records, and then you combine them into one single result. So if you see this MapReduce query, don't worry about the syntax. The syntax, you cannot run the syntaxes one day. Just look at the structure of the query. Don't worry about the syntax. This is the function, this is a JavaScript function. The complete code is provided inline. So this function is working as the mapper. This function is working as the reducer. This is the query. This query will be used to filter out all those documents that needs to be mapped to the nodes of the cluster, and the output will be returned to this particular document collection. Okay. Now let us see a diagrammatical view of this. Imagine that we have our orders collection, and we will be actually working this query after this session. We will be actually doing this query in our MongoDB shell. Imagine that we have collection named as orders, and that contains these 4 documents. Now look at these documents. The customer ID is A123, A123 3 times with different amount 500, 200 and 300. And we only have one document for the customer ID B212 with the amount 200. Now from the map reduce query, first of all, the query status A will be executed. So this is a match query, and this will filter out all those documents for which the status is A. So can you tell me how many documents have status as A? How many documents in this collection
3.
have status as A?
3.
3. And these are the documents that have status as A. We have ignored the document B, sorry, the document that has a status T. Now, the mapper function will do the mapping of these documents based on the key value. We have already provided which value has to be taken as key, sorry, which field has to be taken as the key. So the key in this particular scenario is customer ID. Now, if you look at these 3 documents, the customer ID is same for these 2 documents. So the mapper will give all the corresponding values to the corresponding key A123 to this particular node. This will be one node running on your cluster. Similarly, the key value pairs for B212 will be provided, sorry, the customer ID B212 will be provided to this node on the cluster. Now, both of these nodes will work parallelly in the MongoDB cluster, and then a reduction operation will be done. The reducer will actually reduce the answer and perform the aggregate function of summing up the answer. And our reduction operation was actually sum. So the sum will be done on the values, and you can see that this particular sum, it does not matter how many documents had the same key. The output of this particular block will be single because you are actually working on sum. So you will have only one single answer for all the values that map to the key A123. Similarly, for the key value pair, pairs B212, you will only have one particular sum. That's the beauty of aggregate functions. You will end up having a same result, so only one single result. Now these results, these aggregated result of the sum, they have to be written somewhere, and we are writing these results into a collection known as order_totals. So this is the input collection containing all the documents. This is the output collection. This is the match query that is basically performing the first level filtering. Then the mapper is providing the key value pairs to the nodes of the cluster. The nodes are doing the aggregate function independently at their ends, and then the reducer is adding the aggregate functions. Now we can actually do this. I have shared a PDF document. I will request you to please open the PDF document because I have the queries in that, and we can actually do this. So I will be doing this, and I will request you to do this one by one. Look at the experiment number 2. Look at experiment number 2. You in the red font. I have pasted all the queries for this scenario. You just need to run them one by one. So what you need to do, select the first query and run. So first of all, go to the Mongo shell. Look, we have been disconnected. हम सब disconnect हो गए होंगे. एक दोबारा connect कर लीजिए. So please note here. First of all, you need to reset. Participants, please note here. First of all, we need to reset this shell. This shell must have been discontinued by now. So first of all, press on the reset button. First of all, reset the shell. Okay, now we are ready to run the query. So can we start? Can we start? Can we do the queries?
Yes, sir. Yes.
Sir.
Yeah, so just keep on, just paste one by one the queries written in the red font. Just run the queries written in the red font of the PDF document. So the first query is use BIT. So this is once again we are mounting the database. I hope you understand this now by now. So first of all, use BIT. So this will mount the database. Now the first query is the first query is actually, this is a very huge query, but don't worry about this. This is just inserting 10 documents inside a collection. Can you name the collection? In which collection are we inserting?
Orders.
Orders. And we have not yet, we don't in fact know the schema of orders, but that's fine. That's allowed in MongoDB. Just copy and paste the query here. That's the beauty of MongoDB. You see, I have actually inserted 10 documents without even knowing what is the schema of the orders collection. Now, I will be very quick because we are running out of time and this shell very quickly loses the connection. Now, the third query is we are starting with the MapReduce framework. First of all, I will copy this JavaScript function. Participants, please note that I'm copying this JavaScript function. This is my mapper function. It's basically an inline JavaScript function known as named as map function 1. Just copy this into the prompt, paste this into the prompt. Now to verify whether this JavaScript function has been taken by the MongoDB, you can write here map function 1. I think I have lost my network or somewhere. Just a minute. db.orders.find. So to check whether we are connected or not, I am running a find query. Yeah, so I've lost connection once again. So I will request the participants, please carry on with the queries. I have lost my connection. I'm connecting once again. Please do this query one by one. This is the mapper function. Just copy and paste this in the command prompt, Mongo command prompt. The Mongo online shell. Then copy and paste the mapper function, and then this is the MapReduce query. And this MapReduce query will actually write your output in the collection named as MapReduce example. And if you want to see the output of this, you will have to see all the documents inside this document. So immediately we have a query. We are actually finding all the documents from the MapReduce example collection. And we are also sorting them on the basis of ID. And one means it's a sorting in ascending order. So let me connect once again. I lost the connection actually. So I will request you to please continue with the queries. Run the queries one by one. So let me do this very fast. Use BIT will help me to load to mount my database. Then I will insert my documents. Yeah, let me insert my documents. I have inserted properly. Then I will copy my first. This is my mapper function. I hope this gets copied. Then my reducer function. This shell has a peculiar problem that it leaves the connection very frequently. This is my reducer function. Then this is the actual MapReduce function that takes the reducer and then the last query, that is actually we are trying to find out, see all the documents from the collection. Okay, I think I'm losing the connection. Participants, are you able to do this? Were you able to do this? You should get this as the output. You
are executing the queries without creating collections. So second line is missing.
Okay. Sorry. Yeah. I forgot to create the collection here. Okay. So I will do this as fast as possible. Now I have created the collection, and it also provides you the history, so you can take the advantage of this. This is my mapper function. This is my reducer function. This is my reducer function, and this is the actual MapReduce command, and this I hope should be the output. Okay. So probably I have messed up with the command order. So are you getting the output? You should get this out as the output of this MapReduce query, and please run them one by one. Have any participant got this output? If you look at this output, this is basically
Yes,
the sorted list of This is basically group by. This is basically a group by operation on the 10 document collection. These documents have been grouped according to their customer IDs, and then the amount has been summed up here, and this particular output has been sorted on the basis of their customer ID. So A, B, C, D, this is how the customer IDs are. So that's why we are getting it, the output in the ascending order. So can I proceed? If you are getting the output, I will proceed here. So now we have the same scenario, and you can do the same scenario using aggregate pipeline. I will skip this portion because in the interest of time, but I request you to do this after this session. This is actually the alternative of the same query, but here instead of using the map reduce paradigm, we are using the aggregate pipeline. Here we have a two-stage pipeline. The first stage is a group, and the second stage is actually a function out. Out is used to write the output of one pipeline, the preceding pipeline, to MongoDB collection, and we are writing the output to the collection aggregate underscore alternative underscore 1. So I will request you to run these queries once again, one by one. There are 3 queries to be executed. If you run this query, you will once again get the same output. So that means these two are equivalent. You can either work with a MapReduce framework, or you can work with an aggregate pipeline. In terms of performance, the pipelines are better because MongoDB internally uses its query optimizer to find out the best query plan to execute the stages. I will quickly summarize the slides. There is something called as capped collection in MongoDB. Capped collections are basically collections that have an upper limit on the number of documents that you can have. It's like a circular buffer where you can only add fixed number of data items, and once you use all the slots, then you start writing once again from the beginning. If you know what is a circular queue, this is very similar to a circular queue. So a typical use case of a capped collection is that when you are using MongoDB to store the log information of some application, you know, logs, we don't need to store the log of the entire lifetime. We generally store the log up to some days, sometimes weeks, sometimes seconds, sometimes maybe a month. And we can use the same database or the same data structure to store the logs, and we can once again start from the beginning if we have actually entirely used the log. So capped collections are once again a very, very nice feature of MongoDB that helps you to use the storage very optimistically to store information where you don't bother about losing data that have been written some time back. I already discussed that MongoDB is very, very promising in terms of indexes. MongoDB promises very good performance, and to have very good performance, you need to have good indexes. Sharding is a concept we already discussed, in which we divide our database into different partitions. If you know fragmentation, sharding basically is the concept of horizontal fragmentation. We divide the, you can say that we divide the rows of the table. In horizontal fragmentation, we divide the rows of a table into different. So in MongoDB, I will not say it as record, which I should say as document, but the concept is very similar. We divide our documents into different chunks, and we keep them into different servers so that the queries can be entertained from different servers and the performance can be increased. This is the basic concept of sharding. Now, how to decide which document to be kept at which particular server? For this, we have different sharding strategies. Either you can hash the records into different shards, or you can use range-based sharding. For example, you can decide that from key number 1 to key number 100, I will keep all these documents into this particular server. From key 101 to 102, I will keep all these documents into this particular server. This is known as range-based sharding, or you can use zone-based sharding. A very important term that I cannot discuss because of time, but please take a note of this. This is consistent hashing. Now, consistent hashing is one of the primary components that gives good performance to large-scale applications like Instagram, and also like the Ola, the Uber taxi booking app. Consistent hashing allows you to actually use the same sharding or the same previously hashed schemes even when you are adding new servers to your cluster, or if some servers are going down. So please Google the term consistent hashing. This is one of the most frequently asked interview questions in distributed system design. Replication, we have already discussed. Replication is actually repeating your database, keeping multiple copies of your database, primarily to speed up the operations. If the database is in consistent state, if the multiple servers agree in terms of the database state, then it does not matter which server is responding to your query. But if there are issues of inconsistency, then you may end up actually in doing dirty reads, because you may end up reading a data that already has been modified in a different server. We have discussed the CAP theorem in the yesterday's session. You already know that there are in CAP theorem you have to compromise with one out of the three CAP. MongoDB advocates the concept of consistency with partition tolerance. So MongoDB belongs to the CP category of the CAP theorem triangle. MongoDB enforces consistency, strong consistency, and because of giving more preference to consistency, that is C, MongoDB has to compromise on the feature of A, that is availability. So to enforce a strong consistency, in some situations, MongoDB server may not be available to reply to your query because MongoDB does not want to respond to inconsistent query. MongoDB does not want to give you an inconsistent response. This is the basic idea of replication. In general, the default read operation always goes to the primary. Primary means the first copy of the data. These are the secondary, also known as the replicas. And if some of the server goes down, there are election algorithms to select the new primary. You can get details of the election algorithm in distributed system design texts. So if the data primarily is written to the primary, and these are called slaves. This is the master, and this is called the slaves. The default way to process a read operation is to serve from the primary, that is the master. But you also have read preferences. You can also read the data from secondary, and you can actually have different kinds of read preferences. You can also provide a query in which you have different levels of read performance, either primary or secondary. I will not go into the details of this because we are very close to the end of this session. This is a typical production level deployment in MongoDB. We use sharding as well as replication both. We divide the database in different shards, basically partitions, and inside each shard we create the replica of the shards. So these are the different partitions. Basically the shards, and within a shard, within a server, we create multiple replicas of the same shard to have high availability. As I already discussed, MongoDB supports strong consistency, and because of this, sometimes it may be write unavailable, because by CAP theorem, you know that out of C and A, we need to compromise on one. So MongoDB advocates C. So MongoDB takes consistency with partition tolerance. You can also use MongoDB on a cloud that is known as the MongoDB Atlas. It's free. It provides 2 databases for free to have a first experience. You can deploy your MongoDB on any of the public clouds like Amazon, Azure, or Google Cloud, and then you can connect to that cloud service. In that case, MongoDB works as a database as a service, and there is a very nice tool to work with MongoDB when deployed on cloud. That is known as MongoDB Compass. I forgot to mention that. Please, I apologize for that. Please note this word, MongoDB Compass. So MongoDB Compass is a GUI-based tool that you can use to connect with Atlas, and you can deploy your Atlas on any of the AWS or Google or Azure clouds. You can have a demonstration on free of cost. You can create up to 2 databases on a free MongoDB Atlas cloud, and it's very easy. It will not require any credit card information for this. Okay, so I think it's 12:10. It was difficult for me to close on time. I have compromised with some topics. I apologize for that. Now I'm ready for your queries, but please keep it very brief. Yeah, any queries? I know I was a little bit fast, but it was very difficult to to present a session on a very popular database like MongoDB. It has a lot of features. I have only provided the basic ground that you need for the next session. Yeah, we have a question. A replication of database may speed up queries in MongoDB, but it not increases the. Yeah, sir. Aritra Brahma sir, yeah, you are 100% correct. With replication, we have performance benefits, but always at the cost of lots of additional storage. But you know, replication is sort of compulsion, because you cannot solely depend on one copy of the data. Okay, even in the days of in the days of Microsoft SQL Server or Oracle also, we always had remote backups of data. So in any case, we need to have at least one replica of data set. If you know RAID systems, RAID, if you know RAID systems, we actually mirror the database for better performance as well as for backups. So replication was always has been used even conventionally from RDBMS era. Yeah, any more queries? Yeah, in the notebook example, we have used both arrays and multi-value. Which one to use? It depends upon the type of the scenario. If you have a multi-valued attribute, then definitely you will have an array coming in. And if you have a composite attribute, then that will be represented or modeled by a nested JSON document. Yeah, I will be sharing my ID after the session. I am the joint coordinator of this workshop also, so I am always with you till the last day. Parthu sir, I think there are no more queries.